My name is Ethan Myers, and until one rainy Thursday night in late October, my life was quiet in a way that felt permanent. Not peaceful, just settled. Like dust that had finally stopped floating and decided where it belonged. I was 24, living alone in a small two-bedroom house on the edge of Southtown, Connecticut, where the river was close enough that you could hear it murmur when the wind shifted just right. The house had been my grandfather's. He left it to me 4 years ago, right after I dropped out of community college and admitted I wasn't built for lecture halls or student loans. The place wasn't much to look at. Faded blue siding, a porch that creaked like it had opinions, and a kitchen where the linoleum curled up at the corners. But it was paid off, bought with the last of Grandpa's savings, and it was mine. That counted for something. I made my living fixing things, mostly plumbing. Leaky faucets, burst pipes, backed-up toilets in old colonial houses downtown. On slow days, I'd swap out light fixtures for Mrs. Gladys next door or haul junk to the dump for anyone who tipped in cash. It was honest work. It kept my hands busy and my thoughts from wandering too far back to places I didn't like visiting. My mom lived 3 states away with her new husband. We talked on birthdays, sent the occasional text. My dad hadn't been around since he skipped my high school graduation. The last real relationship I had ended when my ex, Jenna, decided a guy without a 5-year plan wasn't worth splitting rent with. She left her key on the counter and a note that said she needed more than potential. I didn't blame her. I still had the key in a drawer somewhere, next to unpaid credit card bills. I chipped away at $20 at a time. Most nights I came home, heated up whatever was in the fridge, and fell asleep on the couch to late-night reruns. The house felt bigger when it was empty, but I'd gotten used to the silence. It was predictable, safe. That Thursday, the rain started before sunset and didn't stop. By 10, it was hammering the street hard enough to blur the world outside my window. I was halfway through a beer in an old episode of The Office when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but the caller ID read Southbound Towers, Penthouse. Southbound Towers was new construction. Glass and steel. The kind of place where people paid more for the view than I made in a month. I picked up anyway. She introduced herself as Marianne Hart from 12B. She said there was a leak behind her sofa and it was getting worse. Her voice was calm, clipped, like someone used to being listened to. I glanced at the clock, then at the rain pounding the street. Normally, I would have said tomorrow. But there was something tight under her politeness that made me grab my toolbox. 20 minutes later, I was driving through sheets of water, windshield wipers, fighting a losing battle. Southbound Towers glowed at the end of Maple Street, all glass and light against the storm. The doorman waved me through without a word. A soaked guy with a toolbox didn't look like trouble. The elevator ride up was quiet, except for the hum of the motor and the drip of rain from my hair onto the marble floor. When the doors opened on the 12th floor, the hallway smelled like fresh paint and money. Apartment 12B was at the end. The door was already cracked open. Marianne Hart stood in the foyer, arms crossed, still wearing a charcoal suit that looked like it had survived a long day. Her hair was pulled back tight, though a few strands had escaped. She was taller than I expected, even in low heels, and she carried herself like someone who never had to ask twice for anything. Except tonight. The apartment was huge. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a river view that probably cost more than my house, and almost nothing in it. No photos, no books, no signs that anyone actually lived there. Just a leather sofa, a glass table, and a half-empty bottle of red wine beside a single glass. I fixed the leak while she sat at the kitchen island, scrolling on her phone, sighing every few minutes. When the drip finally stopped, I wiped my hands and told her it should hold. She thanked me, said she'd send the money, and for a second, neither of us moved. I don't know why I didn't just leave. Maybe it was the way she said the place was too quiet. Maybe it was how empty the apartment felt, like a hotel no one checked out of. Or maybe I was just tired of my own silence. "You live alone?" I asked. She laughed once, sharp and tired, as of last week. I should have stopped there. Instead, I smiled and said it like a joke, light and careless. "Well, if it ever feels too big, you could always crash at my place. It's cramped, The porch leaks and the neighbor's dog barks at 3 in the morning. But at least someone talks back. I laughed, awkward and loud in the sterile space. She didn't laugh. She just looked at me, nodded once like she was filing the words away, and said nothing. The next morning, at 6:47, someone knocked on my door. I opened the door barefoot, half asleep, expecting Mrs. Gladys with another complaint or casserole. Instead, Mary Ann Hart stood on my porch, rain clinging to her hair, a small black suitcase at her feet. She wasn't wearing a suit this time, just jeans and a cream sweater that looked like it had seen better days. Her eyes were wide, steady, and scared in a way she hadn't been the night before. "Your offer," she said, hands tight on the suitcase handle. "Is it still good?" For a second, my brain refused to cooperate. The rain dripped off the porch roof onto my toes. The river murmured somewhere behind the houses. I stared at her like she'd stepped out of a dream I hadn't finished having. "Come in," I muttered finally, stepping aside. "Before you catch pneumonia." She hesitated just a beat, then crossed the threshold. The floorboards groaned under her boots. I flipped on the kitchen light, suddenly aware of the takeout containers on the counter and the bills piled by the sofa. The bulb flickered, then settled into its usual uneven glow. She set the suitcase down carefully and looked around. The mismatched chairs, the hissing radiator. The framed photo of my grandfather and me by the lake when I was 12. Her eyes lingered on that longer than anything else. "I can pay rent," she said, pulling an envelope from her coat. 3 weeks. Cash. That's all I need. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I can think. I rubbed the back of my neck. "You don't have to do that." She placed the envelope on the counter anyway. 5 crisp $100 bills. More than I made in a good week. "I'm not here for charity," she said, calm but firm. I nodded. "Guest rooms down the hall." "It's basic." She picked up her suitcase and disappeared behind the door. I stood there listening to the rain and the click of the latch, wondering how my life had shifted so fast I hadn't felt it happen. That first week, we barely spoke. I left before dawn for jobs and came home after dark with mud on my boots. The house was always quiet, but different. The kitchen light would be on. A plate of food would be waiting on the stove, covered in foil. Chicken and rice, lasagna. Once, a steak cooked so perfectly it nearly broke me. No notes, just food. Mary Ann stayed mostly in her room. I'd hear the shower at odd hours, the creak of the floor when she paced. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of her through the cracked door, curled on the bed with a book, hair loose, wearing one of my old flannel shirts because her clothes were all dry clean only. She looked smaller without the suit. We exchanged simple words. "Good morning," "Thanks for dinner," nothing more. But the house started changing. One morning, the pile of unpaid bills was neatly stacked with a rubber band around them. The sink sparkled. The fridge was stocked with real groceries. Eggs, milk, apples, even a 6-pack of the IPA I liked. That night, I knocked on her door. She opened it, just a crack, eyes wary. "You don't have to clean up after me," I said. "I know," she replied. "It helps me think." I nodded, then added, "The flannel looks good on you." Her cheeks pinked. It was in the dryer. "Keep it." She closed the door, and I stood there longer than I should have. The second week, the silence softened. I came home one evening to the smell of garlic and rosemary. Mary Ann was at the stove, sleeves rolled up, stirring something in my grandmother's old cast-iron skillet. Her hair was down, curling from the steam. "Hope you're hungry," she said without turning. "I made too much." We ate at the table on real plates. She'd found the good napkins I saved for Thanksgiving. The food was simple and perfect. We didn't talk much, but it wasn't awkward anymore. It was easy. After dinner, she washed. I dried. Our hands brushed over a plate. Neither of us pulled away. "You sing when you think no one's listening," I said. She froze. "You heard that." "Fleetwood Mac," I said. "You've got a good voice." She laughed softly, surprised. I haven't sung in years. That night, I heard her again through the wall, quiet, careful. I lay on the couch listening like it was something fragile I didn't want to break. By the third week, the house felt warmer. She fixed a crooked shelf in the hallway, rewired a flickering lamp. One evening, I found her on the floor with my toolbox open, hair tied back with one of my old bandanas. "You didn't have to," I said. "It was crooked," she replied. I crouched beside her, watching the way her hands moved, precise and confident. She wasn't the woman from the penthouse anymore. She was here. That night, I asked her why she'd really come. "Because you were kind without asking who I used to be," she said. "You didn't ask for my resume." "And who are you now?" I asked. She smiled, small and honest, still figuring that out. I told her to take her time. The 3 weeks passed without either of us mentioning them. The envelope of cash stayed untouched on the counter. I stopped sleeping on the couch. The guest room door stayed open. My boots moved from the door to the hall. Nothing big changed, just everything. And then, one Tuesday morning, her phone rang, and the look on her face told me the quiet we'd built wasn't done testing us yet. Her phone kept ringing that morning. Marianne stood in the living room, staring at the screen like it might bite her. The name flashing across it meant nothing to me, but the tension in her shoulders said everything. She let it ring out, set the phone face down on the table, and exhaled slowly. "Work?" I asked, already knowing the answer. She nodded. "The board." Quote, I didn't push. I grabbed my jacket, my tools, and headed out for the day. But the house felt different, leaving it that morning, like I was walking away from something fragile. When I got home that night, she wasn't cooking, she was pacing. Phone pressed to her ear, voice low and sharp, fragments floating through the room. Emergency meeting. Absence. Reputation. Liability. When she hung up, she stood by the window, staring at the river like it had answers. "They want me back," she said finally. "Tomorrow, in the city." My chest tightened. "What do you want?" She didn't answer. She just turned off the light and went to bed, my bed, but she faced the wall, leaving a distance that hadn't been there before. She was gone before I woke up. The house felt hollow without her. No smell of coffee, no quiet singing, just the radiator hissing like it was annoyed with me. I spent the day on autopilot, fixing pipes and pretending my thoughts weren't somewhere else. She came back after midnight. Headlights swept across the driveway. The silver Audi crunched over the gravel like it didn't belong there anymore. She stepped out holding her heels, hair loose and wild, eyes tired in a way that scared me. "They offered me everything," she said when I asked how it went. "Corner office. More money, more control." She laughed, but it was brittle. "They called living here erratic behavior." I handed her a beer. We sat on the porch, cold biting through our clothes. "I used to think success was a scoreboard," she said. "Titles, numbers, applause." She looked at the house. "Now I think it's this, and I don't know how to choose it." "You don't have to decide tonight," I said. She looked at me, eyes wet but steady. "If I leave, will you hate me?" "I'll hate the quiet," I said. She smiled, sad and soft. "I'll miss the way you hum when you're fixing things, and the way you make coffee too strong, and the way this place feels like it's breathing." She leaned in, touched my cheek, then pulled away. "I need to pack." I helped her, folded sweaters, zipped the suitcase. Every movement felt like a countdown. When she stood in the doorway, suitcase at her feet, she asked, "If I come back, will you still be here?" "Where else would I go?" I said. She smiled once and left. The house went quiet again. Too quiet, I didn't sleep. Just sat on the porch until the sky turned gray. The next day dragged. By the time I got home, the Audi was gone. The envelope of cash was gone too. But the note on the fridge was still there. "Thanks for the quiet. M." I sat on the porch steps that night, holding the flannel shirt she'd left behind, the river rushing like it was late for something. I don't know how long I stayed there. I must have dozed off. Because suddenly, the porch light flicked on. Headlights cut through the dark. The Audi pulled in crooked, fast. Marianne stepped out. No heels, no suit, wearing my old denim jacket. She walked toward me like she was afraid I might disappear. "I couldn't do it," she said. "I didn't even go to the meeting." I stood. "You sure?" Quote. She nodded. "I thought about this house, about you, about how this feels like home." She held up a key, my spare. I pulled her into my arms. This time she didn't hesitate. She fit there like she'd always known where she belonged. Inside, the house woke up again. The radiator hissed. The fridge hummed. The porch light stayed on. We didn't talk about forever. We didn't need to. Because for the first time in a long time, staying felt like enough. The morning after she came back, the house felt different, in a quiet, settled way. Not like something exciting had happened, but like something heavy had finally been put down. Mary Ann woke before me and made coffee. I could tell because the smell drifted down the hall and wrapped around me before I opened my eyes. She burned the toast. I knew she did because she laughed when she scraped it with a knife, the sound light and real, not careful like before. I sat at the table in an old t-shirt, watching her move around the kitchen like she belonged there. No suitcase by the door this time. No tension in her shoulders. We ate without rushing, knees touching under the table, the fan humming overhead, the house breathing around us. We didn't talk about what she'd given up. We didn't talk about what came next. We talked about small things instead. A leaky pipe on Maple Street, the neighbor's dog, whether the porch boards needed replacing before winter hit hard. After breakfast, she picked up her laptop, stared at it for a long moment, then closed it and slid it into a drawer. She looked at me like she was waiting for permission she didn't need. "I'm going to help you today," she said. I smiled. "Hope you like basements." She did. She held flashlights, passed tools, sat on overturned buckets while I worked, and asked questions that actually made sense. The bakery owner stared at her like she was an alien, then offered us free bread on the way out. On the drive home, she rested her hand on my arm, casual and warm, like it had always been there. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. Days turned into weeks. The town adjusted faster than I expected. Mary Ann became just Mary Ann, the woman who waved at neighbors, who helped carry mulch, who argued about paint colors at the hardware store like it mattered. Mrs. Gladys stopped asking questions and started bringing over extra pie instead. The emails from the board kept coming. Mary Ann deleted them without reading. One afternoon, she unsubscribed. That night, we sat on the porch wrapped in the same blanket, cocoa steaming between us. The river moved slow and steady, like it knew something we didn't. "I'm scared sometimes," she admitted quietly. "Me too," I said. She leaned into me anyway. We never made big promises. No speeches, no dramatic plans. We fixed what was in front of us. The porch boards, the hallway rug, the quiet when it got too loud. Some nights, she still sang when she thought I wasn't listening. Some mornings, I still left the coffee pot half full. The flannel shirt stayed on the chair. The spare key stayed on her ring. The house wasn't perfect. Neither were we. But every morning I woke up to the sound of her moving through the kitchen. And every night, I fell asleep knowing the porch light was on because someone was coming home. And that was enough.